Grab your turkey and prepare to clutch your pearls as we go over the history of Thanksgiving today on History Redefined. Let's get some myths out of the way. The first Thanksgiving was not in 1621. The first Day of Thanks, known to be held by Europeans in North America, occurred on May 27, 1578 in Newfoundland, Canada. Although earlier church chop services were probably held by Spaniards in Spanish Florida. However, for British New England, some historians believe that the Popham colony in Maine conducted a Thanksgiving service in 1607. It is not what you think it's going to be. 1607 was also the year that the Jamestown colony arrived in America. Colonists celebrated historically twice, once giving thanks to God in 1607 for surviving the journey, and again in 1610 for a supply ship arriving after a hard winter. Now keep in mind, these were church services. These were not Thanksgiving gatherings and eating services. But these, among others, are proof that the British colonies were celebrating a Thanksgiving long before the official 1621 gathering. The 1621 gathering was not a Thanksgiving at all. In fact, that is a myth. It was a 3-day dinner led by Native American chief Massasoit, but it was not a day of thanks or anything else. It was simply a gathering. The Pilgrims refused to show public displays of worship due to Matthew 6, verse 5 in the Bible, which states, "And when you pray, you shall not be like the hypocrites, for they love to pray standing in the synagogues and on the corners of the streets, that they may be seen by men. Assuredly I say to you, they have their reward." So they were afraid to pray in public, because they were afraid that they would actually be condemned by God for praying in public. Their Thanksgiving celebrations included a very brief blessing of the meal, followed by 3 days of feasting and playing games. Now, what kind of games, you might ask? Nine pins would be one of them, and I will link below a great video that the Townsends has done on that specific game. Now, it needs to be said, we did not actually get the modern turkey as a part of the Thanksgiving meal until the mid-1800s. Before then, Thanksgiving was celebrated with things like eels, fresh fruit, lobster, deer, dried vegetables, and samp. Think grits, but made with milk instead of water. Now, in 1789, Elias Boudinot, a member of the House of Representatives, moved that a day of Thanksgiving be held to thank God for giving the American people the opportunity to create a constitution to preserve their hard-won freedoms. So a Congressional Joint Committee approved the motion and informed President George Washington. On October 3rd, 1789, the President proclaimed that the people of the United States observe, quote, a day of public thanksgiving and prayer on Thursday, the 26th of November. This would have again been a church service, but it was the first time that we see the fourth Thursday of the month of November being used as that day of Thanksgiving. Now, most of the credit for our modern Thanksgiving can be given to Sarah Josephia Hale, who was the editor of Ladies Magazine and Godey's Ladies Book. She began advocating for such a day in 1827 by printing articles in these magazines. She also printed recipes and wrote letters to governors, senators, and presidents saying that we needed to have a day of Thanksgiving. And it had nothing to do with family or coming together or eating good food and being thankful for what we had. It was to sell her magazine. Regardless, after 36 years, she won her battle. On October 3rd, 1863, bolstered by the Union victory at Gettysburg, President Lincoln proclaimed that Thursday, November 26, 1863, would be a national day of Thanksgiving that should be observed every year on the fourth Thursday of November. Then, because of these ladies' magazines, we would get things like turkey, cranberry sauce, stuffing, your typical Thanksgiving foods. So, our modern Thanksgiving was literally to sell cooking magazines. So, you may ask yourself, well, okay, now I know what Thanksgiving means. How does Black Friday tie into this? Well, the term Black Friday was actually coined after a gold crash in 1869. It had nothing to do with sales or shopping. In the 1950s, the Philadelphia police used the term to describe the chaos that would ensue at the Army-Navy football game that was played every Friday after Thanksgiving. By the 1980s, stores that were in the red all year or losing profit would discount their items the day after Thanksgiving to entice shoppers, because this is a natural beginning to the Christmas shopping season. This would help them go into the black or begin gaining profit right before the end of the year. However, one thing that I don't even think stores thought would happen was it turned into a madness that became known as Black Friday, with people fighting over things and beating each other up over TVs and video game consoles and you name it. In 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic caused most brick-and-mortar stores not to hold a Black Friday sale, but rather do it online, and this led to a popular replacement known as Cyber Monday that still continues to this day. So regardless, whether your traditions include eating dinner early and going Black Friday shopping, or staying inside and watching the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, I hope you have enjoyed learning what Thanksgiving truly means. And above all, have a happy Thanksgiving.